Hello friends, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge, where many of you stop by for your daily dose of satisfaction. In this episode, you'll hear about two horrible teachers losing their jobs. The first story is a teacher being catfished and losing everything. The second story is about how one teacher had to be sacrificed for the greater good of students. I hope you stay for these stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story's titled, I catfished one of my high school teachers because he was bullying me. Some background. He knew my dad because my dad was a lawyer and had represented his ex-wife several years before in a super bitter divorce. For some reason, he took out that frustration on me. He would make fun of me and bully me in front of the class. If I raised my hand to answer a question, he would roll his eyes before calling on me and loudly say to the class, "Listen to what OP says. That way, you'll know what the wrong answers are." He would criticize my work, make comments about how I'll never amount to much because obviously I have a learning disability, which I don't. He was just being a prick. I would often get graded for penmanship, but after asking some classmates, apparently I was the only one being graded on that. I began to have anxiety to go to that class. I would dread it all day. My friends would even mention casually, "Yeah, Mr. Smith really doesn't like you, OP. What did you do to him?" My dad was pissed that he was obviously being biased towards me for something that I had nothing to do with. My dad made noise and tried to get me moved into another class, but the district and school were over capacity as it was. I couldn't move classes without displacing another student, and the school didn't think that would be fair to the other student. Clearly, they didn't give two shits about me. Now, my dad had never discussed details of his cases, but I had overheard him angrily telling my mom after the meeting with the principal that he doesn't like that I'm in that pedos class. An idea was planted in my head and started to grow. I devised a plan. I gathered social media pictures of a girl who was underage and made some profiles on Kik and WhatsApp using a Google Voice number from the city. I changed her name for obvious reasons. Once I had him hooked on the made-up 17-year-old girl, I emailed all the chat logs and pictures he sent to her to the school principal and the school district main office using every email address I could find on the school district website and social media pages. Within 3 days of the emails being sent, we had a sub. All we were told was that Mr. Smith had to take some time off due to personal issues. I still don't know what happened to him after that. I graduated about 3 months after he was put on leave and never heard from him or saw him again. I joined the military and left town about 6 months after this all happened, and have not returned to the city since. One of my friends who still lives there told me a while back that he saw him working at the deli counter at the grocery store, not far from where the high school was. I never told a single soul, and nobody knows it was me. The rumor mill went wild about him being a creepy pedo, but nobody knew I had anything to do with it, even though I had benefited the most from this departure. I imagine they tracked the girl down and asked her, but she obviously didn't know him. However, the chat logs from WhatsApp show the girl telling him that she was 17 about 3 days before he sent the first of many pictures of his junk. So that was probably enough to at least get him fired and lose his teaching certification. I don't regret it, but I would never go so far on anyone again. I was a bitter, moody teen, but when you're being bullied by someone who has authority over you, you have to do what you have to do to survive. All I can say is, yikes. Catfishing a teacher, exposing him as a creep, and costing him his teaching degree. His life is practically ruined when friends, family, and colleagues find out. I'd say this is pretty much nuclear revenge in my book. This story's titled, I Made My High School Chemistry Teacher Lose His Job. I went to a ghetto high school in a poor community, but my parents raised me to work my ass off so I could get out of there. My parents never went to college, but because of this, myself and my siblings have all gone to good schools out of state. I maintained a 4.0 until the year in question in high school, taking 5 advanced courses a year. So in one of my upperclassmen years, I signed up for an advanced chemistry course. I knew it would be hard, but I assumed like the rest of my courses that if the class was minimally structured and Google came in per usual, I would be fine. Other students warned me not to take the course, but since I wanted to go to college for chemistry, I knew I had to go through with it. The teacher was horrible. He was old, which was fine, and didn't offer after-class support. which is normal, but also, he didn't offer in-class support. His answers to even basic questions was, "You should understand that. Talk to me about it later." But later never came. He didn't offer lunch hours, didn't offer after school hours, and in class would just put up the answers, which were already available online and in the back of the book. When the first test came back, I had a D- with no notes to even understand what I'd done wrong. When I went to speak with him about it right after class ended, he simply told me to look more closely at the textbook for help, and that he didn't have time for me. He was 2 weeks behind the explanations that he did give because he was constantly distracted. All of this is bad, but he didn't deserve being fired yet. What did was when he got dangerous. In an experiment with hydrochloric acid, a plug held the concentrated stuff in a tube with some magnesium and reacted to form hydrogen bubbles. Well, one of the other students in my group didn't plug the thing properly and the plug fell out. So I asked him how to get the tube back, expecting him to tell us to discard the hydrochloric acid solution, rinse with water, and start over. I'd read the safety section in my textbook, which had this approach to working with acids. His response was, he insisted that I stick my ungloved hand into the solution and just grab the plug, and then still in the solution, plug it back in. He wouldn't even put his own hand in to do it, so my high school self thought that this was inherently a bad idea. I took some more magnesium from the workbench and kept adding it to the solution until it stopped reacting, eating up all the hydrochloric acid to leave water. And it kept getting worse. One day, he brought what he claimed were illegal fireworks into the classroom and started setting them off. He thought it was funny to point them at us, wearing no safety equipment or goggles, and hoodies that could have easily been caught on fire. He frequently would leave the room while a group of high school kids were playing with Bunsen burners and caustic chemicals. So in a combination with a total lack of education I was getting, I didn't feel safe. The last contextual thing. My high school teachers' union had negotiated for tenure. After coming to college, I've learned that this is very unusual, and in retrospect, it's an idiotic thing. This chemistry teacher was tenured, which meant that there was basically no way to fire him. He was still teaching because he refused to retire, and he had a son going through college that he needed to pay for. But at a certain point, he was affecting my chances of getting into college. I wasn't about to let one man's issues affect the prospects for the rest of my life, so I looked up recording laws for my state and found that it was a one-party consent state, meaning I could legally record my teacher with audio, as long as the campus didn't say anything against it and I was one of the parties consenting. So for a month, with my grade tanking despite the hours of studying and 3 study books on the course, I recorded him. I recorded his fireworks, his crying in the back chemical storage room leaving us unsupervised, and then I made a throwaway Gmail account and made a throwaway Dropbox account. I uploaded everything and emailed it to my superintendent with the ultimatum that if something wasn't done, I would email the recording to the local news, and that I really didn't want to do that. Within a day, I heard back, with her assuring me that I wouldn't be punished for ratting him out. My parents, her, and myself met. We went over my grades, my unmarked test and my homework, and the videos. They asked me to first talk over my concerns with the teacher, and I said I was uncomfortable with that, given his treatment of female students. The superintendent said that she wouldn't tell the teacher who had submitted the evidence, but that they needed to speak with him about the concerns to hear his side of the story. My parents and I said that was completely reasonable, as long as my name was never mentioned. The next day, the teacher said he needed to speak with me after class alone. I told him I couldn't, as I had another course after that, and he said that it was important. I turned my phone's recorder on again, right before the class ended, and as I was packing up, he approached me. Due to the shape of the classroom, I was literally backed into a corner, and would have had to push this man to the side to get out. He then started saying that one of the students in the course had brought unfounded concerns and lies to the administration about what was going on in his course, and that he knew that we hadn't always gotten along well, but he had hoped that I wouldn't have done that to him. I lied through my teeth and said that I didn't know what he was talking about, and that he was making me uncomfortable by blocking my access to the door, and I was late for my next class. He didn't even deny what I was saying, just said that since I clearly had a problem with him, he'd be willing to stay after class to help me specifically, and it seemed like I was struggling so much. I emailed the superintendent that recording during my next course and CC'd my parents. My parents were furious. Since the district couldn't fire him, he was put on immediate permanent medical leave. The superintendent also wrote me a thank you college recommendation letter, partially to keep me quiet, and partially because they'd been trying to get rid of this guy for years. Hey, sometimes you gotta sacrifice one person for the greater good of others. He didn't really seem like he wanted to teach at all, and was just showing up for a paycheck since he had tenure. Also, the hydrochloric acid thing was pretty messed up. Also the fireworks thing, why the fuck would he shoot fireworks in a classroom? I hope this story's real. Let me know if you think the first story would be considered nuclear or not. If you aren't subscribed, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you guys in the next one.